You're watching Altec 2K Gaming. This is the Day 5 update for my Max Block Bleed Gladiator League Starter for Serttlers of Kalguur. God, that's a mouthful. There's been quite a few changes since the weekend update, let's get into it. First off, we now have a 6 link. My 6 link is Lacerate of Haemorrhage, Chance to Bleed, Multi-Strike, Brutality, Melee Physical Damage, and Volatility. We've switched out the Sulphur Flask for a Blood Sap Tincture. The base I got from someone in guild, and I crafted increased effect and 24% to damage over time multiplier with melee weapon attacks. These don't work in Path of Building yet, so I did have to modify the item just to get it to show the damage numbers. And the increase in damage from this is huge. It's over 1 million DPS. For anyone who played tinctures when they were released in the Wildwood, it's not quite the same. In order to limit their use, there is now something called mana burn that occurs when you use the tincture. And it's basically a mana debuff that burns through your mana, increasing the longer it's been active. Eventually this will burn through your entire mana pool, and at that point the tincture will shut down for 6 seconds. You will have to reactivate it. Now the time we can use this is actually much longer than you'd think, and that's because we are leeching mana all the time. So until the mana burn gets as high as our available mana, or we stop leeching, this will keep running. This is really effective against bosses, but I wouldn't use it so often during normal mapping unless I reach a rare. And that's because if we're not watching it and we run out of mana, we won't even be able to cast Lacerate. We'll be completely out for a fraction of a second while it leaps back up, and that is enough to get you killed. Assuming, of course, they get a lucky hit that bypasses our block, which does happen. It's happened to me. On to the axe now, and Jack the Axe has actually dropped in price. As a result, I went and bought a new one with higher rolls. This increased damage numbers substantially, and I won't be changing out of this for quite a while. It's gonna take one hell of a rolled axe to beat it. Total cost for this axe was 20 chaos. Considering my first axe, which was woeful, cost 70 chaos, this is a bargain. Now, as I mentioned with my 6th link, we now have Lacerate of Haemorrhage. Getting this gem upgrade, whilst giving us huge amounts of damage, does introduce a problem, and that is that our AoE drops substantially. This is because, unlike normal Lacerate, this gem doesn't scale its radius based on gem level. To counter this, we made adjustments to the tree. Namely, I picked up the Brinkmanship cluster, which is just below the duelist starting area. This gives us a total of 40% increased area of effect, and returns Lacerate of Haemorrhage to what we were getting with normal Lacerate. This is quality of life at the expense of damage, but it's well worth it. We've also made a change to our curse setup. We no longer use Poacher's Mark with Mark on Hit. Instead, we now use a self-cast vulnerability. If you hate self-casting, then stick with Poacher's Mark, but it is about 500,000 less damage. I've also changed the Culling Strike setup. I've now linked it to Tempest Shield instead of Molten Strike. It procs every time we block, instead of every time Molten Shell cracks. I also finally got around to putting an Anointment on our amulet. I picked Hatchet Master. This gives us a 20% chance to gain Onslaught for 4 seconds on kill, 10% increased attack speed with axes, and gives us 24% increased damage with hits and ailments. This is actually huge. Note that Acrimony does give you a tiny edge on damage, but I really want the attack speed because that can actually inadvertently increase our damage. The more potential bleeds we can put on an enemy, the more chances of getting high numbers from Volatility, and eventually Rizlatha's Coil, which by the way is supremely expensive right now. General item upgrades, I've upgraded my amulet, my helmet and one of my rings. Next I'll be looking for a belt upgrade. This is probably going to be a Stygian Vice with an attack jewel in it, until Rizlatha's Coil drops to a reasonable value, or I make a ton of currency, whichever comes first. Speaking of currency, I finally got my first Divine. But don't think this ends my woeful luck this league, because I didn't get it. My gold mercenary map runners in the league mechanic actually got it for me. This was from a tier 3 map, which was incredibly unexpected. Pantheons. I have gone Soul of the Brine King for my major. I've upgraded this recently to get 100% chance to avoid being frozen. This stops the odd case where I get frozen and die. I will of course be upgrading it to reduce effective chill on me, and in anticipation of that, when I last picked up a jewel to cap my dexterity and also get some attack speed, I also picked up 34% reduced effective chill on you. It will still have an effect because I just don't have enough yet to completely counteract it, but it will be a big improvement on what a chill feels like right now. The latest POB update has me at 6.2 million DPS. This is a massive increase over the last update video. It also allowed me to get my first 2 Watchstones. Endless Hunger was deathless, and the abomination that is the Searing Exarch fight destroyed me once with balls. I would have used a ruby flask, but I hadn't actually picked one up yet and I couldn't be bothered buying one, so it's my own fault. At time of recording, my character is 75% of the way through level 94, so I should hit level 95 in the first week, which I don't think I've ever done before, which just shows how hardy this character actually is. I'm not getting absolutely pummeled to death each fight. Another notable call out is I finally got around to automating my flasks. You should definitely do this, and far faster than I did. I am probably going to look at what to do with the silver flask now that we have another form of onslaught. I may keep it just because it's more up during boss fights, but I don't know yet. Right now I am really happy with how the character feels. So far I've spent about 150 chaos on the character, and that includes buying a Jack the Axe twice, so you should get this for far cheaper if you're only just starting to roll it. That said, I'm classing this budget version of this build complete. I am probably going to push this character to kill uber bosses. When I do that, I will produce another video where the cost goes up. But that's for another time. Thanks for watching, and may the RNG be with you.